My wife asked me to be more spontaneous. I surprised her with a weekend trip. She forgot to mention she hates surprises. The security guard at my wife's office building physically blocked my path when Rebecca started screaming. Not the delighted kind of screaming you'd expect when someone's husband shows up with plane tickets to Napa Valley. The raw, animalistic kind that made the receptionist reach for the phone and 3 people emerge from nearby offices with confused expressions. My wife stood frozen behind the glass doors of Conference Room B, her face cycling through emotions I'd never seen before, a shock dissolving into rage, dissolving into something that looked disturbingly like terror. In my hand, 2 first-class tickets for a flight leaving in 4 hours. In her hand, a leather portfolio I didn't recognize. And between us, apparently, a chasm of secrets I was only beginning to understand. I'd been married to Rebecca for 8 years when she dropped the spontaneity comment. We were eating Thai takeout on a Wednesday night, same routine we'd had for years. Her with pad see UW, me with green curry, sharing spring rolls while watching whatever Netflix recommended. She set down her fork and said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather. You know what would be nice? If you were more spontaneous? Just surprise me sometimes. I'd laughed it off, thinking she meant flowers or unexpected dinner reservations. Rebecca was a creature of habit, just like me. We were both accountants. We color-coded our shared calendar. We'd once spent an entire Sunday alphabetizing our spice rack. Spontaneity wasn't really our thing, which is why the comment stuck with me. Over the next 3 weeks, I'd tried little things, brought home her favorite pastries from that bakery across town without telling her first. Booked a dinner reservation at a new restaurant without consulting our shared calendar. Each time, her reaction was off. Not grateful, exactly. More like anxious. She'd thank me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, then check her phone obsessively for the rest of the evening. I told myself I was overthinking it. Rebecca had been stressed at work. She'd mentioned something about a difficult audit coming up. But the more I tried to be spontaneous, the more tightly wound she became. It should have been my first clue that something was deeply, catastrophically wrong. The Napa trip idea came from my coworker Dennis. His wife loved wine, he said. Women always loved wine country. It was romantic, spontaneous, exactly what Rebecca wanted. I spent 3 days secretly planning it were first-class flights, a boutique hotel, reservations at 3 Michelin-starred restaurants, a private vineyard tour. I'd even arranged coverage for her work, calling her assistant Priya and spinning a story about a surprise anniversary celebration. Priya had seemed hesitant, asking twice if I was sure Rebecca would be okay with this, but I'd chalked it up to professional courtesy. I cleared my own schedule, packed bags for both of us, and decided to surprise her at work with the tickets. The flight left at 6:30 that evening. By my calculation, we'd have just enough time to get home, grab the bags, and make it to the airport. Perfect. Spontaneous. Exactly what she'd asked for. The moment I walked into her office building, something felt wrong. The receptionist, Diane, looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, a sympathy maybe? She asked if Rebecca was expecting me, which was odd since I'd visited before without issue. I told her it was a surprise and headed toward the executive floor where Rebecca's office was located. That's when I saw her through the glass walls of Conference Room B, and that's when everything started unraveling. She wasn't in a meeting. She was alone with 2 large cardboard boxes, methodically packing items from what looked like a personal filing cabinet I'd never seen before. The leather portfolio was embossed with initials that weren't hers. And when she looked up and saw me standing there with flowers and plane tickets and a stupid grin on my face, her expression wasn't surprise. It was pure, undiluted panic. That's when she started screaming. The security guard, his name tag read J. Torres, kept asking if everything was okay while Rebecca stumbled out of the conference room, her face flushed, hands shaking. She grabbed my arm with a grip that would leave bruises and pulled me toward the elevator with a forced laugh that sounded nothing like her actual laugh. Honey, you surprised me. I'm sorry, you scared me, that's all. But her eyes were telling me something different. They were darting to the conference room, to the boxes, to the portfolio she'd left on the table. She jabbed the elevator button repeatedly, and I noticed her hands were trembling so badly she could barely hold her purse. Let's talk in the car, she said through clenched teeth. We can't do this here. That's when I knew. This wasn't about the surprise. This was about something I wasn't supposed to see. We didn't speak in the elevator. We didn't speak walking to my car in the parking garage. Rebecca kept her phone clutched in her hand, screen lighting up with notifications she didn't check but clearly wanted to. When we got in the car, I didn't start the engine. I just sat there, looking at her, waiting. "When were you going to tell me?" I asked quietly. She played dumb, doing that thing where she widened her eyes and asked, "Tell you what?" But we both knew. "The boxes, Rebecca. The portfolio. Whatever you were packing up in that conference room." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "It's not what you think," she finally said, which is what guilty people always say when it's exactly what you think. I was organizing files. They're reorganizing the office layout and a row. "Don't lie to me." My voice came out harder than I intended. "I've known you for 10 years. I know what you look like when you're lying." That's when her phone rang. She looked at the screen and her face went white. She declined the call. It rang again immediately. She declined again. Then a text notification, then another. I watched her face cycle through panic and calculation, and that's when I made a decision I'd never made before in our entire relationship. "Give me your phone," I said. "What? No, that's insane." "Give me your phone, Rebecca, or I drive us to a divorce attorney right now." The words hung in the air between us. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head, and I realized this was the first truly spontaneous thing I'd done in years, and I hated every second of it. But I also knew that whatever was happening, whatever she was hiding, had just escalated from suspicious to critical. She clutched the phone tighter. "You don't trust me?" "Should I?" Silence. Then quietly, "No, probably not." She didn't give me the phone. Instead, she started talking, fast, frantic, the words tumbling out in a confession that made less sense the more she said. She'd been planning to quit her job. No, not quit AA, transition to a different position. A consulting role, independent. That's why she was packing. The portfolio was from a business accelerator program she'd been accepted into. She hadn't told me because she wanted it to be a surprise. She was going to tell me this weekend, actually. Funny timing with my surprise and her surprise. She laughed. It sounded like glass breaking. I sat there watching my wife of 8 years weave a story that might have been convincing if I hadn't seen her face in that conference room. If I hadn't seen how she looked at those boxes like they contained evidence. If her phone wasn't buzzing nonstop with calls, she refused to answer. "Show me the acceptance letter," I said. "What?" "From the business accelerator. Show me the acceptance letter." Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. That's when I started the car and drove us home in silence. The house felt different when we walked in. I can't explain it better than that. Same furniture, same photos on the walls, same coffee mug I'd left in the sink that morning, but it felt like I was seeing it through new eyes of Boru, or maybe through Rebecca's eyes. Whatever secret version of Rebecca had been living parallel to the woman I thought I knew. She went straight to the bedroom. I heard drawers opening and closing. When she came back out, she was holding a folder. "Here," she said, thrusting it at me. "The business accelerator. I was accepted 3 months ago." I opened it. Official letterhead, her name, congratulations on being selected for their elite consulting intensive program. It looked legitimate. It felt wrong. 3 months ago was exactly when she'd started acting differently, when she'd started asking me to be more spontaneous, when she'd started checking her phone constantly and working late and coming home with that tight, anxious energy. I pulled out my laptop and started searching. "What are you doing?" she asked, but I ignored her. I found the Business Accelerator's website. Called the number listed. Got a cheerful receptionist who confirmed they had a program. Yes, very competitive. But when I asked if she could verify Rebecca Thornton's acceptance, she hesitated. "I'm sorry, sir. I can't confirm participant information over the phone. If you'd like to verify enrollment, you'll need to submit a request through our official channels with the participant's written consent." I asked how long that would take. 2 to 3 business days. I thanked her and hung up. Rebecca was staring at me. "You called them? You actually called them?" "Yes." "You don't trust me at all, do you?" "Should I?" I asked again. This time, she didn't answer. She just walked back into the bedroom and closed the door. Not slammed, closed. Quietly, deliberately, like she was sealing something away. I didn't follow her. Instead, I did something I'd never done before. I opened her laptop. She'd left it on the kitchen counter, still logged in to her email. My hands shook as I moved the mouse, part of me screaming that this was a violation, that married couples don't spy on each other, that I was being paranoid and controlling. But a bigger part of me, the part that had seen her face in that conference room, needed to know. The email was organized with the kind of precision only an accountant could achieve. Folders within folders, everything labeled, color-coded, archived. I clicked on personal and found nothing unusual. Bills, shopping confirmations, newsletters. I clicked on work and found exactly what you'd expect: client communications, internal memos, meeting notes. Then I saw a folder labeled Archive Old Account, and something made me click it. The emails inside were from an address I didn't recognize, email protected. Every single one was to or from Rebecca. I opened the first one, dated 6 months ago. Everything is in place. The LLC paperwork cleared. Account transfers will process Friday. Nobody will notice until the quarterly review, and by then you'll be clear. Stay calm. You've planned this perfectly. J. My vision tunneled. I clicked another email. Spoke to the contact in Portland. They can have everything ready by month's end. New documents, clean background check, the works. Cost is higher than we thought, but manageable given the returns. Don't back out now. J. Another one. Your husband seems oblivious. That's good. Keep him comfortable. The spontaneity thing was smart. Keeps him off balance. Focused on trying to please you instead of asking questions. 2 more months and you're free. J. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were completely numb. I scrolled through email after email, each one revealing pieces of a conspiracy I couldn't fully comprehend. Rebecca wasn't planning to quit her job. She was planning to disappear. The bedroom door opened. Rebecca stood there, and the look on her face told me she knew exactly what I'd found. "Close the laptop," she said quietly. I didn't. I kept scrolling. Another email. Transferred another $15K to the secondary account. Total is now $340K. Your husband still hasn't noticed. How is that even possible? J. I looked up at her. $340,000? My voice sounded far away, like someone else was speaking. Where did $340,000 come from, Rebecca? She walked toward me slowly, hands raised, like she was approaching a dangerous animal. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you've been systematically stealing from our marriage and planning to vanish. I wasn't stealing. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. She sat down across from me, and for the first time since I'd surprised her at the office, she looked directly at me. Really looked at me. Do you remember when my father died? The question caught me off guard. Her father had passed away 5 years ago, a heart attack that came out of nowhere. Of course I remember. He left me money, a lot of money, in a trust that matured last year. I stared at her. You're telling me you inherited money and didn't tell me? I'm telling you I inherited money and kept it separate because... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Because I wasn't sure about us anymore. The words hit like a physical blow. You weren't sure about us. We've been going through the motions for years, David. You know we have. Same routine, same conversations, same life. I needed to know if I could stand on my own. If I wanted to stand on my own. So, instead of talking to me like an adult, you created a secret email account, moved money I didn't know existed, and planned what? To just leave one day? It wasn't like that. I was exploring options. The business accelerator is real. The consulting practice is real. I wanted to build something independent, something mine. And yes, I wanted the financial security to leave if I decided that's what I needed. And Jay? Who the hell is Jay? Her expression shifted. Just slightly, but I caught it. Fear. A consultant. Bullshit. She stood abruptly and walked to the window, arms crossed, staring out at our backyard where we'd planted roses 3 springs ago. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. His name is Julian Cross. He specializes in helping people start over, new identities if needed, asset protection, International transfers? My brain couldn't process what she was saying. New identities? What are you, a fugitive? No, God, no. But I needed to know my options if things got complicated. Complicated how? With you, with us, with the divorce I was considering. She spun around, and I saw tears in her eyes for the first time. I've been unhappy for 2 years, David. 2 years. And you never noticed. Not once. You just kept following your routines and assuming everything was fine because that's what you do. You assume. You don't ask. You don't see me. So your solution was to commit fraud and plan to disappear? I wasn't committing fraud. The money is legally mine. I just kept it in a separate account. And the new identity? The contact in Portland? The LLC? That's legal? Silence. That told me everything I needed to know. I closed the laptop and stood up. My legs felt weak, like I'd run a marathon. I need to think. I need time to process this. David, wait. No. You've had months to plan whatever this is. I need a few hours to figure out what the hell my life just became. I grabbed my keys and walked out, leaving her standing in our kitchen, surrounded by the life she'd been systematically preparing to abandon. I drove without destination, just circled the same 5-mile radius around our neighborhood, while my mind tried and failed to organize what I'd learned. My wife had inherited money she'd never mentioned, had created secret accounts, had contacted someone who specializes in new identities, had been planning to leave or at least establishing the infrastructure to leave. And the whole be more spontaneous thing? A test or a distraction? Or maybe both. A way to keep me focused on being a better husband while she built an exit strategy. The cruelty of it was staggering. I found myself sitting in the parking lot of our bank. It was 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. The plane to Napa had left without us hours ago. I walked inside and asked to speak with our personal banker, Claire Nguyen, who'd helped us refinance our mortgage 2 years ago. She greeted me warmly and led me to her office. What can I help you with today, David? I need a complete breakdown of all accounts under my name or my wife's name, joint and individual, everything. Her smile faltered slightly. Is everything okay? I'm not sure yet. That's what I'm trying to find out. She typed on her computer, professional mask firmly in place. All right, I'm pulling up your profiles now. For joint accounts, we have your primary checking, your money market account, and your joint savings. For individual accounts registered to you, we have your SEP IRA and your individual brokerage. For accounts registered to Rebecca, she paused, scrolling. We have her individual checking and a business account registered to an LLC called Velocity Consulting Group. That one's fairly new, opened about 4 months ago. How much is in the LLC account? I asked. Claire hesitated. I can't share details about accounts you're not authorized on. I'm her husband, which gives you no legal access to her individual or business accounts. I'm sorry, David, but those are the privacy rules. I nodded slowly. Can you tell me if there have been any large transfers from our joint accounts to her individual accounts in the last year? Claire's expression shifted to something like concern. She typed again, more slowly this time. I really shouldn't be showing you this level of detail without Rebecca present, but yes. There have been 6 transfers from your joint savings to her individual checking in the past 14 months, ranging from $8,000 to $25,000, total of approximately $93,000. The number hit me like cold water. $93,000 from our joint savings, another $340,000 from her inheritance that I'd known nothing about. That's $433,000 my wife had moved, hidden, or otherwise secured without my knowledge. Claire, I said carefully, if someone were planning to leave their spouse and wanted to hide assets, what would that look like? Her face went completely professional. I can't provide advice on that topic, David, but I can tell you that if you have concerns about financial impropriety or believe you need legal protection of marital assets, you should consult with a family law attorney immediately. Like, today, if possible. She handed me a business card from her desk drawer. This is someone I've worked with before. She's very good and very discreet. Tell her Claire Nguyen referred you. I took the card. The name printed there read, Amanda Kepler, family law attorney, specializing in complex asset division. I thanked Claire and left the bank, sitting in my car with the business card in my hand, trying to decide if calling an attorney made this real or if it had been real for months, and I'd simply been too blind to notice. I called the number. A receptionist answered, and I explained I needed urgent consultation regarding asset protection in a marriage. She asked if I could come in immediately. They'd had a cancellation, and Attorney Kepler had an opening at 5:15. I said yes, and drove across town to a modest office building near the courthouse. Amanda Kepler turned out to be a woman in her mid-50s, with steel gray hair and the kind of sharp eyes that said she'd seen every divorce strategy ever invented. She shook my hand, offered me coffee I didn't want, and sat down across from me with a legal pad. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. The surprise trip, Rebecca's panic, the emails from Julian Cross, the secret accounts, the LLC, the inheritance I'd never known about, the $93,000 transferred from our joint savings. The business accelerator that might or might not be real, the contact in Portland who could provide new documents. Everything spilled out in a disorganized rush, and Amanda took notes with the calm efficiency of someone who'd heard worse. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me. "First question. Do you want to save this marriage?" I opened my mouth, closed it. "I don't know," I finally admitted. 20 minutes ago, I would have said yes. Now I don't even know who I'm married to. She nodded. "Fair answer. Second question. Do you want to protect yourself financially and legally from whatever your wife has been planning?" "Yes." "Good. That I can help you with." She flipped to a fresh page on her legal pad. "Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm filing an emergency motion on Monday morning to prevent any further transfers or liquidation of marital assets. That'll freeze everything until we can get a full accounting. Second, I'm referring you to a forensic accountant named Douglas Chenna." "Wait, I was told to avoid that name." She raised an eyebrow. "Avoid the name Chen?" "Long story, personal reasons. Do you have someone else?" "Sure. Forensic accountant named Beverly Okonkwo, 15 years experience, brilliant with hidden assets. I'll send you her information. Third, you're going to document everything. Every email, every account statement, every conversation you can remember. We'll need it all." "Is what Rebecca did illegal?" I asked. Amanda leaned back in her chair, considering. "Depends. The inheritance itself? If it was left specifically to her, it's separate property in most circumstances. But transferring community property, the money from your joint accounts, without your knowledge or consent, that's potential financial misconduct. The LLC and the identity consultant, that's where things get murky and potentially criminal, depending on what she intended to do with those resources." She pulled a packet of papers from a drawer. "This is a retainer agreement. My fee is $350 an hour, $5,000 retainer to start. We'll need to move fast if your wife realizes you're aware of her plans." "She knows I know about the emails," I admitted. "I confronted her before I came here." Amanda's expression tightened. "Then we're in a race. If she has the resources and connections you described, she could liquidate and disappear before we can freeze anything." "How sophisticated is she?" "She's a CPA. She knows financial systems inside and out." "Great," Amanda said dryly. "My favorite kind of case. Sign here, and let's get started." I signed the retainer agreement and wrote a check that made my hand shake. Amanda immediately began making phone calls, scheduling an emergency hearing, contacting the forensic accountant, setting machinery in motion that I only partially understood. By the time I left her office at 6:30, I had a thick folder of documents, 3 follow-up appointments scheduled, and instructions to spend the weekend documenting everything I could remember about Rebecca's behavior over the past year. I drove home in the dark, dreading what I'd find when I got there. The house was quiet when I walked in. Rebecca's car was in the driveway, but the kitchen lights were off. I found her in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with her phone in her lap. She looked up when I entered, and her eyes were red from crying. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I'm so sorry, David. I never meant for it to go this far. I got scared and made terrible decisions, and now everything's falling apart." I sat down in the chair across from her, maintaining distance. "Tell me the truth, all of it. No more lies, no more half-truths." She took a shaky breath. "The inheritance was real. $250,000 from my father's trust. I put it in a separate account because I wanted something that was just mine. Then I started thinking about what my life would look like if we split up, and I got paranoid. What if you tried to claim half? What if you hired a lawyer who'd argue it was community property? So I talked to Julian. How did you even find someone like Julian Cross? Online. There are forums for people planning to leave marriages, people who want to protect themselves from vengeful spouses. He seemed legitimate, had credentials, references from other clients. And he suggested what? Creating a fake identity? He suggested protecting my assets in ways that would be difficult to trace. The LLC was his idea. Thou set up a business consulting practice, move money through it legitimately, build a client base that would justify income if questions came up later. The Portland contact was insurance. If things got really bad, if you turned out to be dangerous or abusive, I've never touched you. The words burst out of me. I've never raised a hand, never threatened you, never I know. She was crying now. I know you're not like that, but Julian said abusers always seem nice at first, and I needed to be prepared for every possibility, and I spiraled, David. I spiraled into paranoia and worst-case scenarios. $340,000, I said quietly. You moved $340,000. 93 was from our joint account, she admitted. I know I shouldn't have done that without talking to you. The rest was the inheritance plus returns from some investments Julian recommended. And you were going to do what with all that money? Just vanish one day? She shook her head. No. Maybe. I don't know. I hadn't decided anything concrete. I was just keeping options open. You had someone helping you establish a new identity. That's not keeping options open. That's planning an escape. Silence. Then, so quietly I almost missed it. Maybe I wanted to escape. The words hung between us, and I realized that despite everything, the lies, the secret accounts, the betrayal, part of me understood. We had been going through the motions. We had lost something vital along the way, but understanding didn't make it hurt less. I hired an attorney today, I told her. She's filing an emergency motion Monday morning to freeze all marital assets pending a full accounting. Rebecca's face went pale. You hired a divorce attorney? A family law attorney. Whether it becomes a divorce depends on what happens next. What happens next? She asked, her voice small. You tell me everything. Every account, every transfer, every plan, every lie. And then we decide if there's anything worth saving here or if we're just delaying the inevitable. She nodded slowly and reached for her laptop. For the next 3 hours, she walked me through everything. A detailed spreadsheet showing every account, every transfer, every dollar. The LLC was real but had no actual clients, just a shell for moving money. The business accelerator was legitimate, but she'd been planning to use it as cover for establishing residency in another state. The Portland contact? A document forger named Alexis, who Julian had connected her with, who could create a complete background for $20,000. She'd paid a $5,000 deposit, but never gone through with the full transaction. She'd been afraid, unsure, trapped between wanting to leave and not being able to commit to actually doing it. By the time we finished, it was after 10 at night. Rebecca looked exhausted, wrung out, like she'd aged a decade in a single day. What now? She asked. Now you send all of this to my attorney, I said. Everything. The spreadsheets, the emails, the account statements. Full transparency, no more secrets. And then? And then we sleep in separate rooms while I figure out if I can ever trust you again. I stood up and grabbed a pillow from the bed. Rebecca didn't try to stop me. I spent that night on the couch in our living room, staring at the ceiling, replaying 8 years of marriage and wondering how many other signs I'd missed. How many times had she been planning her exit while I was obliviously planning our future? How many conversations had been lies? How many smiles had been masks? The spontaneity comment played on loop in my head. Such a simple request. Be more surprising. Keep me guessing. Don't be so predictable. Now I understood it had nothing to do with romance. It was tactical. Keep me off balance so I wouldn't notice the systematic dismantling of our financial life. Saturday morning I woke to find Rebecca already gone. A note on the kitchen counter said she'd gone to stay with her sister for a few days. Give me space to think. Her sister Emma lived 2 hours away. Or at least, that's where she'd always claimed her sister lived. Now I didn't know what to believe. I forwarded Rebecca's email confession and the financial spreadsheet to Amanda Kepler, then sat down to follow her instructions about documenting everything I could remember. Strange behaviors, late nights at the office, weekend conferences that seemed vague when I asked for details, the time she'd been oddly insistent I not come to her company holiday party, the password changes on her laptop she'd explained as work security requirements, the new phone she'd gotten 6 months ago, more expensive than necessary, with features for encrypted messaging. Every small detail that had seemed innocent now felt sinister in retrospect. By Sunday afternoon, I had a 15-page document outlining 2 years of suspicious behavior I'd dismissed or rationalized at the time. Amanda called that evening. I reviewed everything you sent. We have a strong case for financial misconduct, but there's something else you need to know. I had Beverly run a preliminary trace on the LLC account, and it's more complex than your wife indicated. The money didn't just sit there. It's been moved through 4 different accounts, including 2 offshore holdings in Belize and the Cayman Islands. My stomach dropped. Offshore accounts? Rebecca said it was just an LLC for business consulting. Either she lied, or she doesn't know the full extent of what Julian Cross set up for her. Which brings me to my next point. I reached out to some contacts in law enforcement who handle financial fraud. The name Julian Cross flagged in their system. He's under investigation by the FBI for running an asset concealment scheme that's helped multiple people hide money from spouses, business partners, and the IRS. If your wife used his services, she may be involved in a federal case. The room tilted. FBI, federal case. These were words that belonged in movies, not my actual life. What does that mean for Rebecca? It means she needs a criminal defense attorney, not just me. But it also means you need to protect yourself legally. If she's facing charges, you don't want to be implicated as an accessory. We need to establish that you had no knowledge of these accounts or activities. I didn't. I believe you, but we need to prove it, which means you may need to cooperate with the FBI investigation if they contact you. They're going to contact me? Probably. Spouses are always persons of interest in financial fraud cases, but if you're forthcoming and have documentation proving you were kept in the dark, you should be fine. Should be fine. The words offered no comfort. I thanked Amanda and ended the call, then sat in the silence of my empty house, trying to comprehend how a surprise weekend trip had escalated to FBI investigations and offshore accounts, and my wife potentially facing federal charges. Monday morning arrived with a call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Is this David Thornton?" a woman's voice asked. "This is Special Agent Lisa Kellerman with the FBI. I'd like to meet with you regarding an ongoing investigation into financial misconduct involving Julian Cross. Are you available this afternoon?" My hands went numb. "I have an attorney," I managed to say. "That's fine. Bring your attorney. Can you meet at the federal building at 2 p.m.? I called Amanda in a panic. She told me to calm down. This was expected. She'd accompany me to the interview. At 2 p.m., we sat in a sterile conference room across from Special Agent Kellerman and her partner, Agent Raymond Foster. Both looked exactly like you'd imagine FBI agents look about: dark suits, neutral expressions, folders full of documents. Agent Kellerman laid out photos on the table, screenshots of emails, bank statements, wire transfer records, and one photo that made my blood run cold. Rebecca sitting in a coffee shop with a man I didn't recognize, papers spread between them. "Do you recognize this individual?" Agent Kellerman asked, tapping the photo. "Is that Julian Cross?" "Yes. This was taken 4 months ago. How much do you know about your wife's relationship with Mr. Cross?" "Nothing," I said honestly. "I just found out about him on Friday when I discovered emails on her computer." "You accessed her email without permission?" Agent Foster asked, leaning forward. "I'm advising my client not to answer questions about how he obtained information," Amanda interjected smoothly. "But we can confirm that Mr. Thornton discovered evidence of financial accounts and communications he was previously unaware of, at which point he immediately retained counsel and took steps to document everything." Agent Kellerman nodded. "Fair enough. Let me be direct, Mr. Thornton. Your wife has been involved with a scheme that's defrauded at least 8 other individuals and hidden approximately $3.2 million from legitimate legal proceedings. We've been building a case against Julian Cross for 16 months. Rebecca's accounts, emails, and LLC transactions are part of that investigation. What I need to know is whether you were a knowing participant or an unwitting victim. I felt Amanda's hand on my arm, steadying. Mr. Thornton is a victim, she said firmly. He had no knowledge of offshore accounts, asset concealment, or his wife's communications with Mr. Cross until last Friday. He's cooperated fully, provided documentation, and retained counsel to protect marital assets from further misconduct. He's willing to cooperate with your investigation to the extent that it doesn't compromise his own legal position in the pending divorce proceedings. Agent Kellerman studied me for a long moment. Did your wife ever ask you to sign documents you didn't read? Transfer money you didn't understand? Provide access to accounts or financial information? No, I said. Our joint accounts were truly joint. She handled most of the banking because she's better with numbers, but I reviewed statements regularly. I never saw anything suspicious because she was moving money from accounts I didn't know existed. And you never suspected she was planning to leave? Not until she asked me to be more spontaneous, I said, and proceeded to explain the comment that had led to the disastrous surprise trip. Agent Foster actually smiled slightly at that. So your attempt to be spontaneous exposed the whole operation. I guess so, I said. Worst surprise of my life. The interview lasted 2 hours. They walked me through every financial transaction they could track involving Rebecca, asking if I recognized accounts or transfers or entities. The answer was consistently no. By the end, Agent Kellerman seemed satisfied. Mr. Thornton, I don't believe you were involved in the financial misconduct. However, I need you to understand the situation your wife is in. If she's convicted of wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to conceal assets, she's looking at significant prison time. The best thing she can do right now is cooperate, provide information about Julian Cross's operation, and potentially work out a plea agreement. But that decision is hers to make. When will you arrest her? I asked, the words feeling surreal. We already have. This morning. She's being processed now. She'll be arraigned tomorrow morning. You can contact her attorney if you want information about her bail hearing. The room spun slightly. Rebecca was in custody, being processed, facing federal charges. The woman I'd been married to for 8 years was now a defendant in a criminal case. Amanda drove me home after the interview. I know this is overwhelming, she said, but you handled it well. You were honest, forthcoming, and didn't try to protect her at your own expense. That matters. I don't feel like I handled anything well, I admitted. I feel like my entire life just imploded. It did, she said bluntly. But the implosion wasn't your fault. You didn't create this situation. You just tried to surprise your wife with a weekend trip. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. A romantic surprise had unraveled a federal crime. Rebecca's arraignment was Tuesday morning. I didn't attend, but Amanda went to observe and reported back. Rebecca had been granted bail above $200,000, which her family somehow posted. She was out but under conditions: surrender passport, GPS monitoring, no contact with Julian Cross or known associates, and no access to any financial accounts pending trial. The trial itself wouldn't start for months, maybe a year. In the meantime, our divorce proceedings were on hold, frozen by the criminal case and the FBI's need to trace and recover hidden assets. I spent the next week in a fog, going through motions at my own accounting job while fielding questions from concerned co-workers who'd somehow heard about Rebecca's arrest. The gossip mill worked fast. By Wednesday, everyone knew my wife was facing federal charges. I kept my head down, did my work, and avoided detailed conversations. On Thursday, Rebecca's attorney called and asked if I'd be willing to meet with Rebecca for a mediated conversation. She wants to apologize, the attorney explained. She understands if you refuse, but she's asking for one conversation before everything becomes permanently adversarial. I agreed, mostly because I needed answers only she could provide. We met in her attorney's conference room on Saturday morning. Me, Rebecca, her criminal defense attorney Peter Graves, and Amanda as my counsel. Rebecca looked terrible, pale, exhausted, with circles under her eyes that suggested she hadn't slept in days. She didn't make eye contact when I walked in. Peter Graves started. My client wants to make clear that she takes full responsibility for her actions and deeply regrets the harm she's caused Mr. Thornton. She's prepared to cooperate fully with the divorce proceedings, including equitable division of all assets, and will not contest anything to minimize further pain to her spouse. Rebecca finally looked up at me. I'm so sorry, David. You deserved better than this. Better than me. Why? I asked, the question I'd been carrying all week. Why did you do any of this? She took a shaky breath. I was unhappy. That part was true. But instead of talking to you like an adult, I convinced myself you'd trap me, control me, make it impossible to leave. Julian fed into that paranoia. He told me stories about wives who tried to leave and ended up financially destroyed by vindictive husbands. He made me believe I needed to protect myself in extreme ways, and the more I planned, the more guilty I felt, and the guiltier I felt, the more I needed the plans to be real, because otherwise I'd just been destroying our marriage for nothing. So you were trapped by your own escape plan, I said. She nodded, tears spilling over. Everything spiraled out of control. The offshore accounts weren't my idea. Julian set those up without really explaining what they were for. When I realized he was hiding my money in ways that were probably illegal, I couldn't back out because I was already too deep. And then you showed up at my office with plane tickets, and I saw everything I'd built crashing down and I panicked. You could have just told me you were unhappy, I said quietly. We could have gone to counseling. We could have separated amicably. You didn't have to blow up our entire lives. I know, she whispered. I know that now. But 6 months ago, in the middle of my anxiety spiral, working with someone who was telling me I was smart to prepare for the worst, I convinced myself this was necessary. I was wrong. I was so profoundly, catastrophically wrong. The conversation lasted an hour. Rebecca answered every question I had, explained every decision, admitted every lie. By the end, I understood the how and the why, but I wasn't sure it mattered anymore. The person sitting across from me was a stranger who happened to look like my wife. The trust was gone. The future we'd planned, a house in the suburbs, maybe kids eventually, retirement fund we'd been building, all of it had evaporated. When we left, Peter pulled Amanda aside for a private conversation. I waited in the lobby, and when Amanda came back, she looked thoughtful. Rebecca's pleading guilty, she told me. Peter's working out a cooperation agreement with the prosecutors. She'll testify against Julian Cross in exchange for reduced charges. She's looking at probably 3 years minimum, but with cooperation and good behavior, maybe 18 months. Prison. My wife was going to prison. The reality hit me like a physical weight. What about our finances? I asked. Can we settle the divorce before sentencing? Peter's proposing we work out a settlement agreement now before the criminal case proceeds. Rebecca will relinquish any claim to joint assets, sign over her portion of the house and retirement accounts to you, and accept that the offshore money, if recovered by the FBI, will go to restitution for Julian Cross's other victims. In exchange, you'll agree not to pursue civil action against her for the financial misconduct. It wasn't about the money, I realized. It had never been about the money. It was about trust, partnership, building a life together. Rebecca had chosen paranoia and secrecy over any of that. Tell Peter we have a deal, I said. I want this over. The divorce was finalized 3 months later, 2 weeks before Rebecca's sentencing hearing. I attended the hearing, not out of spite, but because after 8 years of marriage, it felt wrong not to witness the final chapter. Judge Marilyn Foster presided, and after hearing testimony from the prosecutors, Rebecca's attorney, and Rebecca herself, she delivered the sentence: 24 months in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, full restitution of any recovered assets, and permanent prohibition from working in financial services. Rebecca turned and found me in the courtroom gallery before they led her away. She mouthed, "I'm sorry," one last time. I nodded, but didn't say anything back. There was nothing left to say. The aftermath took longer to process than the crisis itself. I sold the house. Too many memories, too much Rebecca embedded in every room. Moved into a smaller place closer to work. Started therapy with Dr. Marcus Okafor, a psychologist who specialized in trauma from intimate partner deception. He helped me understand that I wasn't stupid for missing the signs, that people who plan to deceive their partners are often extraordinarily good at maintaining the illusion of normalcy. You were living with 2 versions of Rebecca, he explained during one session. The one she showed you and the one she was building in secret. The cognitive dissonance of discovering they both existed is profound. Give yourself time to grieve both versions, the woman you thought you knew and the one who betrayed you. I threw myself into work, took on extra projects, volunteered for assignments nobody wanted. Anything to avoid the empty apartment and the quiet evenings where I'd previously spent time with Rebecca. My coworker Dennis, who'd suggested the Napa trip in the first place, apologized profusely, even though none of it was his fault. "I'm never giving anyone relationship advice again," he said over lunch one day. "I broke your marriage with a wine recommendation." I actually laughed at that. My marriage was already broken. You just helped me discover it before I wasted more years. The FBI investigation into Julian Cross wrapped up 8 months after Rebecca's sentencing. He was convicted on 14 counts of wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. Rebecca's testimony had been instrumental. He got 12 years. Of the $3.2 million he'd helped conceal, investigators recovered approximately $2.6 million. My share. The $93,000 Rebecca had transferred from our joint accounts, plus my portion of the offshore funds, came to about $170,000 after legal fees and restitution payments were settled. I put it all in a savings account and tried not to think about it. Blood money felt like the right term, even though technically it was just the return of assets that should have been marital property all along. A year after the divorce was finalized, I got a letter from Rebecca. She was 6 months into her sentence at a minimum security federal facility, and the letter was brief, carefully worded, clearly reviewed by her attorney before sending. She was doing well, had gotten a job in the prison library, was taking courses through a distance learning program, hoped to rebuild her life when she got out, maybe move to a different state, start completely over with no lies this time. She didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't expect me to write back, just wanted me to know she was genuinely sorry and genuinely getting help. I read the letter twice, then filed it in a box with all the other divorce documents. Maybe someday I'd be ready to forgive her. That day wasn't today. Dr. Okafor asked me during our next session if I'd dated since the divorce. No, I admitted. The idea of trusting someone enough to be vulnerable again feels impossible. That's normal, he said. Your trust was shattered in a profound way. Rebuilding it takes time. But I want you to consider that Rebecca's betrayal says more about her capacity for deception than about your ability to judge character. You weren't naive. You were married to someone who was simultaneously living a double life and escalating into criminal behavior. Most people you meet won't be doing that. How do I know? You don't. That's the risk of connection. But the alternative is isolating yourself forever to avoid potential pain. And that's not living out, that's just existing. His words stuck with me. I started small. Coffee dates arranged through apps, where I was upfront about being divorced and working through trust issues. Most people were understanding. Some shared their own stories of betrayal and recovery. I dated a nurse named Olivia for 3 months before realizing we were better as friends. Then a teacher named Rachel for 6 months before we mutually decided we wanted different futures. Neither relationship was serious, but they were honest, and that mattered more than I expected. 2 years after the surprise trip that destroyed my marriage, I found myself booking a weekend getaway to Napa Valley. Solo this time. Just me, good wine, beautiful scenery, and time to reflect on how far I'd come from that afternoon when Rebecca had started screaming in her office conference room. I stayed at the same boutique hotel I'd originally booked, ate at one of the Michelin-starred restaurants, took the private vineyard tour, and somewhere between the second tasting room and the sunset view over the hills, I realized I'd survived. Not just survived or healed. I was dating occasionally, enjoying my work, building a life that was wholly mine, without secrets or hidden accounts or parallel realities. The spontaneity Rebecca had asked for had ultimately destroyed her, but it had freed me. Standing there with a glass of Pinot Noir watching the sun set over the valley, I raised my glass in a silent toast. To truth, to transparency, to never again ignoring red flags in the name of comfortable routine, and to the possibility that someday, with someone new, I might be ready to take a real risk on love again. The kind built on honesty instead of escape plans. When I got home, there was another letter waiting, this time from Amanda Kepler. Rebecca had been released early for good behavior, 17 months served instead of 24. She was living in Oregon now, working as a bookkeeper for a small nonprofit, rebuilding under her own name with no new identities or hidden accounts. Amanda had included this information simply as a courtesy to let me know in case I ever encountered Rebecca or received contact attempts. I filed that letter with the others. Rebecca was part of my past now, a painful chapter that had taught me invaluable lessons about trust, communication, and the importance of addressing problems directly instead of constructing elaborate evasions. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, my most recent ex, who'd become a genuine friend. "Wine tasting this weekend? I promise not to embezzle anything or fake my own death." I smiled and typed back, "Only if you promise to be predictably honest. I'm done with surprises." If you enjoyed this, you, I'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.